So hey everyone, as always, welcome to the channel and thanks for stopping by. My name is Rich Charpentier, I'm the channel host, and if you're a regular here, you know that we talk a lot about drones, building your drone business, and actually expanding on the business. So just yesterday I found myself doing a video live stream about some new 360 stuff that we've been doing. So we're looking more into 360 virtual tours. And I've been talking about that for a couple weeks, and what I thought I'd do today is do a hands-on tutorial of doing a 360 virtual Pano, a virtual tour, with a digital SLR. So next to me I've got my Canon 7D. It's not a Mark II, it's not a Mark III, it's none of those things. This is my very old Canon 7D. I've also got a Canon 5D that's sitting in the other room where we usually record. So by the way, the audio might be a little weird here. We've got some really tall ceilings and we're using the Rode Go wireless setup. So if we're picking up some echo, I do apologize for that. So we're actually going to walk through doing an HDR setup. So we're going to do a high dynamic range Pano. Now, do I think this is the best approach for doing virtual tours? Not necessarily. There are other techniques like doing a flash ambient blend, and we might do one of those down the road, but I'm not an expert on that yet. I'm still learning about it, and I've been learning from some really great YouTubers, Nathan Cool and Rich Baum. I've learned a lot more for doing real estate photography, and we might start sharing some of that with you because in addition to the drone work, we're doing more real estate work as well, and new techniques are always appreciated. So today we're going to do this one. We're going to do an HDR because it's a quick setup. So we've got this 7D, we've got it sitting on a Nodal Ninja 6. So we just recently picked this bracket up, and this bracket actually rotates around, so I'm rotating it here, and you can take a photo every so many degrees. In our case, for today's video and walkthrough, we're going to do every 60 degrees because I've got a really challenging space. We've got some great things going on over here. We've got some terrible things going on over here. And there's a reason why I actually set this video up where I did. We've got 3 massive windows behind here, so I'm being lit by the outside sunlight. We've got another massive window over here with a slider door on it. So we've got all this crazy ambient light coming in here. And then we look over into the corner over here, and as you can see, super dark over here. We're gonna need to do something about that exposure, right? Yeah, something's gonna have to happen because that's a really dark area. And then behind me, almost looks like we're walking into pitch black. So this is a oddly shaped house. The lighting in here is not conducive to doing real estate photography or 360 virtual tours. It's actually a freaking nightmare. In the past couple of weeks, we have been practicing with doing flash ambient virtual tours as well, where you actually take a shot with the ambient, you blend that together with a shot that you pop a flash on, you get these things together and you get something that's much nicer than the sum of its parts. Add into that you're doing a virtual tour where you're actually rotating around an entire room, taking multiple photos, and you're looking at a pretty big challenge. So while I've been a fan of high dynamic range photography for quite some time, I've been doing it since like 2007, I've gotten the feeling over recent years that it's getting overused at some points, and people really overdo it. Images that I've seen from different real estate photographers who are heavy into HDR, oftentimes the colors and the textures look nothing like the real room. So one of the big things that we're very interested in doing is actually displaying what you're walking into. If you're a potential home buyer and you're doing virtual tours and you're looking at images online, you start developing some expectations, and then when you walk into the building that you're interested in and the wall colors are way different and the tile colors are way different and the textures are different, you know, sometimes it doesn't even feel like the house you were looking at online. So we've been working very hard on getting some techniques down where we're really sharing what the interiors of homes look like so that when potential buyers come in to take a look, they're not disappointed. So in the case of this one, we've got all these lighting challenges. We're not going to be using a strobe at all. We're just going to be doing this based on exposures. We're going to be doing 3 exposures with the Canon 7D. So we're going to do a pretty severe overexposure, severe underexposure, and proper exposure. Now, when I first meter for my first frame here, I'm actually going to have the camera looking at the windows. We're going to take all of these windows in so that we can get some detail out of the windows. Now, it's going to, we're going to have to ratchet things down. We're going to have to shoot at a faster shutter speed to compensate for all of this brightness coming in. When I turn into that dark corner, I'm not going to adjust my exposure. So I'm going to be shooting on manual. I'm going to set my, my shutter speed, and we're going to fix ourselves at f8, so f-stop 8. So we're going to be picking one shutter speed. Once we've settled on the exposure, we're going to take the next photo into the dark area, and we're not going to change that exposure at all. One of the things that I found with PTGui is if you're just trying to feed in these images to PTGui for stitching a panorama afterward, if you try to feed them in and they don't have the same exact exposure settings, PTGui gets really angry and it says, I'm not doing this for you. So in order to do this in an HDR style, we're going to pick our initial exposure, and we're going to go with that exposure throughout the entire room. Even those dark areas that we'd like to brighten up more, we're not going to touch that. So when I get this set up going, we're going to talk you right through it. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to be pausing this just for a moment. I'm going to be resetting where this camera is, and then we're going to start walking through some of the shots. And I'll be talking you through those shots as we go. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and hit the pause button on this, and then we'll resume when I've got the camera set up, and we're going to talk about the exposure settings and you know, how bad it's going to look in some instances. It's going to be terrible. But when we blend all this together, we might have something workable. All right, so we've gotten everything moved around, and now you can see we've got the tripod here with the Nodal Ninja 6, and we've got the Canon 7D ready to go. Also, I just wanted to point out the lighting here is terrible. I've done this on purpose. I set the camera over here for you so that I could rotate through and do these shots. But I wanted you to get the idea. We've got some really blown out stuff over here. We've got some super deep shadow stuff going on over here. So this is an incredibly challenging, just regular photo. If you just wanted to get the lighting in this room done right, this is going to be a major challenge. And then as you start going through the other areas, it becomes even more of a challenge. So what I'm going to do with this one, I could pick any point here to start shooting, and I can set up my initial exposure for whatever the first frame is going to be. In this case, I want to expose for these windows because I'd like a really cool window pull. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to set things up. So number one, I'm just changing my shutter speed because I would like to let's go right about there. So this is going to be crazy because I'm currently shooting for this overexposed area compared to the rest of the room. So we're going to try this at 1/125th of a second. This might work out terrible for the rest of the space into the living room. We're going to find out together. So here we go. This is going to be at 1/125th of a second, and then it brackets 3 stops up and 3 stops down. To get our HDR. So all right, there we go, 1/125th, and I'm leaving that alone now. There we go. Now, I'm not going to change anything. We're going to rotate 90 degrees, and let's get a look at this room, and still at 1/125th of a second. This is going to be underexposed, you could say, but all right, we've got enough there to blend these things together. Let's rotate again to 180 degrees, still at 1/125th of a second. This room over here is going to be dark. Even for our best overexposure, this is going to be a dark area. I think I'm going to go ahead and leave this video camera on here as we come around to 270. And yeah, we're going to leave that in there so that you two can be part of the fun. All right. And finally, we're going to rotate this back around to 0 degrees. And we're going to shoot the ceiling to tie this together. So let's go ahead and ratchet this down. And there we go at 90 degrees. I'm just going to move myself out of the way because that fisheye can really take in a lot. So I was just getting myself out of the way. So in total, we did 0 degrees, 90, 180, 270. And so I'm just looking at this. Yeah, that's kind of still dark in there, very dark in there. All right, so we picked our initial exposure. We went with that same exposure across the board throughout both the kitchen and the living room. The next part is going to be offloading to the computer and then feeding this into PTGui to see if we made something decent. Now, like I said, I'm not an expert on this yet. We're still learning this process with the digital SLR and utilizing the Nodal Ninja 6. But I think we might have an interesting enough result to give you a reason to do a little experimentation too. So the next step is going to be on an iMac. We're going to be running a program called PTGui, which I actually purchased years ago before I got interested in this. I was using PTGui just to do some 360 panos with my drones. And as we've seen with the recent healthcare crisis, people are starting to get more interested in virtual tours and things. And with that in mind, we thought, hey, it's probably time to step up our own game for this as well. All right, let's move into the computer room. And in there, we're going to go ahead and get everything set up. And we're going to play with it on screen and see what an HDR on one of these types of brackets looks like. And if it's something that's usable and really portrays the reality of the rooms that we're working in. All right, let's move on. All right, everyone, here we are back in the studio room. I'm still using the same mic setup so that we have the audio pretty consistent. If it does sound a little different from the other room, you know, big cavernous room, not such a big cavernous room here. Okay, so we're gonna do this kind of quick and dirty, all right? Up here on screen right now, you can see that I've got my EOS 7D card in, and we have 15 images. Okay, so how do we get 15 images? We shot 3 brackets 4 times, going around on 360 degrees, so that's 12. And then we also shot 1 set of brackets pointing up at the ceiling to fill that area in, so that's 3 more. So there's the 15 images. We're not gonna worry about the images down below the tripod stand. We can work around that. And like I said, so I just wanted to show you this one. This is a quick and dirty version. You can see on here, we've got some darker looking images. I'm just gonna move this out of my way, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna scroll down to PTGui. And so I can't believe that I've found another reason to use PTGui again. It's pretty awesome, if you ask me. So, you know, I've been using it years ago regularly for doing drone 360 panos when a lot of the drone applications didn't support that, so it was doing it manually. That's why I got a hold of PTGui back then. But now that we're investigating doing the digital SLRs with a bracket like the Nodal Ninja 6, PTGui, hey, it's back on the front and center for me to use it. So we're going to go ahead and load those images. I'm just going to take them right off of the card. I'm not putting this in Lightroom. I'm not doing anything. Just wanted to show you this setup because, like I said, we've been experimenting over the weekend and actually last week. So I used an 8mm lens, by the way, on the Canon 7D. I'm going to say okay to that. And now it has noticed something. Look at how dark those dark areas are too, by the way. Is this going to blend together good? Who knows? Let's check it out. All right, so under point number 2, set up panorama. We have an enable HDR mode here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And I'm going to enable the HDR mode and link the bracketed exposures. That sounds good to me. I'm going to skip the other 2. And you know, you can pause this if you want to read them real quick. But this is an HDR set. I'm not going to do true HDR. We're just going to do an exposure fusion. When I say okay to that, look at this. It just brought it down to basically 5 images. Not really 5 images, but it's condensed these down to give me an idea of the best exposure areas. So we can see that that living room area definitely is darker. I could go up here to control points and generate the control points and then optimize. Or what I can do is just let PTGui have its fun. So I'm going to let it do it. So if I just go in there to align images, it's going to, go off and running. We're not done here yet, so just give it a minute. It's still working things out. It's figuring out where it wants to put stuff, and it's matching up control points. And there we go. And as a matter of fact, there's the tripod that we're currently filming on right now. So that was filming out in the kitchen living room area. So as you can see, look at those window pulls. Wow. Very exciting stuff here. But what's not so exciting is stuff outside of the kitchen area. It's kind of dark. It's drab. Maybe I should have started my shooting toward the darker rooms instead of trying to expose for these windows. But there's a couple things we can do. We all believe in Photoshop and Lightroom, and we worship at the altar of editing so often. So we could bring this into Lightroom to work on the exposure a little more, brighten up those areas. Remember, as we're going from darker to brighter when we're doing editing, we are introducing more noise. One of the reasons why we've become interested in using the DSLR for doing these types of panos is because the amount of detail that you can get with the digital SLR compared to, like an Insta360 or a Ricoh Theta, the Z1. So we can get a lot more out of our digital SLR images putting these things together and retain a lot more detail. So there is a way here for sure that we could brighten this a little more and not introduce too much noise. So, hey, we're just about there. So we just very quickly did this. So if you were to go on a job location and you wanted to do some 360 virtual tour imaging, you could, in theory, use HDR, but you're definitely going to have some editing afterward. And, getting email reminders. Sorry about that. I forgot to turn the email off. I apologize. All right, I'm going to go and say, yeah, create that pano. We're going to do a couple things. So its width, wow, 14,000 pixels. I'm going to ratchet that down to 6,000. And we're going to do this as a TIFF. And we are going to make this 16 bits. I'm going to say okay. Right now it's wanting to just store it over on my memory card that I plugged in from the camera. I'm going to go ahead and let it, because we're not trying to organize this or anything. I'm trying to give you an overview of, hey, does this work? So we're going to take the exposure fused panorama. So that's what we just saw right here. This is the exposure fused panorama. So it's going to make that into a TIFF for me. It's going to save it where I started. And I'm also going to grab blend planes here. So it's actually going to blend all of my underexposures together. It's going to blend all of those midline exposures together, and it's going to blend all of the, we've got the overexposed, underexposed, and properly exposed. It can make 3 layers for me, and I can take those 3 layers and I can put them into Lightroom and blend them there. I could throw them into Photoshop. I could throw them into Aurora HDR. I could throw them into Photomatics Pro, sorry, talking too fast. So I have some opportunities to use some other software, and that's of interest to me. So in total, it's going to make this fused panorama, and then it's also going to throw out 3 more for me. I'm going to hit create the panorama, and we're going to patiently wait for this. This is going to take a moment. These files get big. There's no two ways about it. While we're waiting for it, just take a look, just from what we captured on the camera itself. The files, 23 megs, 20 megs, 27, 22. These are sizable files. Now we've smashed all these things together, and we've made bigger, wider panoramas. And with that in mind, the TIFFs that we're going to get out of this are going to be just shockingly huge. I think maybe somewhere in the 170 meg range for each of them. So, yep, we're patiently waiting. You can tell this is me having patience. We're patiently waiting for that stitching. We are running the iShowU video capture right now. We're running PTGui. I've got a couple other background tasks that are running right now. So it's not shocking that this takes a couple of minutes. And, this iMac's getting a little older now. Can't believe I can say that now, but it is, I think, almost 3 years old. So, yeah, it'll be 3 years old for Thanksgiving time. almost there, stitching that panorama, and then we'll be able to look over in that storage card. Maybe I made a mistake by sending it to the storage card instead, but I was being lazy. My apologies for that. We are almost there. Oh, look at that go. Watch pot never boils, right? Okay, let's slide this on over here. So now we have the panorama TIFF, and then we have those 3 different layers and 128 megs each. First thing I'm going to do, let's go ahead and shut PTGui down. I'm not going to bother to save this because I'm just doing this for this little instructional video here. What I'm going to do now is actually I'll bring this back. Let's grab those 3 layers and see what happened with those adding those blend plane ones. I'm just going to throw it in Aurora HDR. Aurora HDR is not usually my choice for doing more realistic HDRs. There's a lot of room to work on things in Aurora, so you might be more comfortable with it than I am. But not a super big fan of some of the features, but we can get things up pretty quick. So we are going to make sure chromatic aberration reduction, and we're not going to deal with ghost reduction. We don't have anything moving in there. But check it out. It recognized the 3 different layers. So we've got EV negative 3.0, EV 0, and EV plus 3.1. So you might as well just call it plus 3. Let's go ahead and click that make the HDR. So this is only one of the methods that we can use for creating virtual tours and virtual, 360 Panos. So this is one of many tools. The other way that I'm preferring a lot more is blending ambient light and flash together to create some really dynamic images. Now see, look at how underexposed the rest of the area is here. Because we exposed for those windows. Of course, in Lightroom we could fix things up. We can also fix things up here in Aurora. The big worry is that I don't want to add a lot of noise. When we're looking around in here right now, we don't see a lot of noise. This area right here, this dark area with the cabinets, is probably where I should have started my initial exposure, so that we were overexposing for that area to get more of the detail. But we would not have gotten the windows like this. So let's see, what can we do here? Let's increase the exposure by 1. Hey, that's looking okay. It's still looking kind of dark, and quite frankly, having lived in this house for 1.5 years, that living room area really depresses the tar out of me. It is a dark cave, even with this window over here. Okay. So bringing the exposure up by 1, getting us there. I really wouldn't want to do this. Ooh, exposure of 2, not so great. Maybe 1.5. Now this is just editing, and it comes down to your own preferences. Let's drop the highlights. I wanted to do that for the windows. What happens if we drop the whites? Yeah, no, that's starting to look pretty bad, and most likely not one of the places I want to work on. By the way, Aurora HDR does have some presets, and they've got an architecture set. So let's do a bright interior. And even saying bright interior with them, it's not bright enough. Exposure, negative 1.0. How is that a bright interior? There we go. So as you can see, we can definitely play around with this a little more and blend those 3 layers and get something that's somewhat realistic. I mean, if we could brush down those windows just a little bit, this isn't terrible, and it wasn't a massively time-consuming process. Now, if you're looking at like 360 cameras like the Insta 1X or the Ricoh Theta or any of the other ones out there, the Coup cams, they can do this as well. You can plop them in different rooms, but you don't have as much room in editing afterward. The Insta 360 1X we have, it packages everything up into a ready-to-go JPEG that we can tell it to do an HDR on, or we can also export DNGs. But the sensors and everything on those compared to something on a larger digital SLR like a 5D Mark II or a 7D, or one of the new 60s, they're going to give you a whole lot more. So this is, this is just one way to go at it. not using the 360 cams that are out there today. So you probably already have a digital SLR, or maybe you've got a little mirrorless as well. And you too can do HDR panos this way. By the way, that crack up there, that is a real crack. It cracks all the way through the ceiling. The house apparently settling. I'm glad I don't own this house. Okay, let's go ahead and close down Aurora HDR. And actually, before I completely wrap this up, as I said to you before, I am no expert on this. I am still learning when it comes to doing like HDR panos. Very, very familiar with standard HDR work, but this one's a little new on me. And I've got to say, between the HDRs and the flash ambient blends, I really lean toward the flash ambient blends because the colors can be really spot on, and definitely brighter rooms by illuminating them with strobes. So they do take a lot longer. So if you're looking to get in and out of doing a real estate shoot and you've got to budget your time well, maybe one of these HDRs will work out for you. It's just going to be fine-tuning afterward. Fine-tuning afterward in Lightroom and Photoshop. And as you can see on my Lightroom screen here right now, you're like, oh yeah, you've been really messing with this stuff this week, Rich. Yeah, I've really been messing with this stuff this week. So we're just waiting. All right, there we go. So we've got all the other stuff, but let's go ahead and just drag this one in here. So this is the blended one that PTGui blended for me. And we can take a look at that one. It's in a TIFF format, so we do have a little more room in editing. We did that as 16-bit. I'm just going to hit the import button. Instead of being patient, let's just let it roll. So this is going to take a moment as well. Like I said, the iMac's slowing down a bit. It's amazing, you know, how top-heavy some programs have become, Lightroom. While I love Lightroom, I do have to say that it's eating up way too much RAM these days for what it does. It really hasn't evolved that much in 5 years. And 5 years ago, on one of the older versions on my laptop, I could go through stuff extremely fast. So I don't know why it's so top heavy now. Let's take a look at this. So this exposure blend was pretty good. It feels very realistic to me. So when I'm in the kitchen area looking out to the living room area, it's darker out there. It's not, you know, it's definitely a cave. Let's go into the develop module real quick. And I'm going to pull the highlights down to richen up those window pulls even more. But beyond that, let's go ahead and let's pop the exposure up. Let's go to 1.5 and let's see what that looks like. So that might turn into a decent 360 for virtual tours. Overall, it's bright enough here. Let's zoom in on that area because I've got a bad feeling about noise in here when we're bumping the exposure. Okay, the noise is not horrible. I can see it. I'm being really nitpicky. And if you're into photography, you can probably see it too, and you're being nitpicky going, yeah, it's terrible, Rich. By the way, I didn't clean up the kitchen area or the living room area. This, you know, not an official photo or anything, so we didn't stage it. So my favorite water bottles are on the table, the Hydro Flasks. No, I don't work for them. I'm not sponsored by them. But if you want to drop them a line and tell them, hey, Rich Charpentier is always popping your Hydro Flasks into his photos, I'd appreciate that because I love their products. So, all right, over here, when we were doing the filming over there of what was happening and setting up the shots, there's the iPhone that's being recorded on right now, and there's the Rode Wireless Go system. Okay, so this one could be usable. It's not god-awful terrible, and it's going to depend on what your customers want. If they want the super high-end, really crisp, really clean 360 virtual tours, then I would suggest that you're going to be bringing a portable strobe around with you, and you're going to be doing the flash ambient. If they want something to give folks a general overview of the home's layout or the construction site's layout, because this can be more, you can do this for more than just real estate. So I want to incorporate more 360s into our construction progression tracking for our clients. So I'll be working on that this year and putting together some new videos for them so that they understand the value of what we be offering with these 360 tours. But anyways, if you were trying to move through a home quicker and minimize the edit time, you know, throwing this into a Pano viewer, I think it's going to be more than passable. This is looking all right. And it definitely looks a lot better than the same shot that I've done with the Insta360 1X. So you want to talk about getting really noisy in these rooms that are transitioning from very bright to very dark. All you got to do is look at one of those, and if you do even a slight zoom in, you too are going to go, oh, I can't stand the amount of noise in here. Now, of course, we can go through and do some more fine tuning, maybe push the vibrance up just a little bit. The color of the walls, this is pretty close to accurate. It's this weird tan gold, and it depends on time of day and light hitting it. Sometimes it looks a little washed out in some rooms. Sometimes it is pretty much an obnoxious color. The one other thing that I could do in here, let's just try on the white balance, just cooled it down ever so slightly. All right, with that, I'm gonna wrap it up. I just wanted to share that one with you to show you some of the work that we're doing and give you a quick mini tutorial. So we use the 7D, we use the Nodal Ninja's bracket. We shot at 0 degrees, 90, 180, 270. We did 3 brackets in each, and then we also shot up at the ceiling. Once we were done, we brought it into PTGui, and really getting through a 3-bedroom home like this one, doing it the HDR way, is gonna be pretty darn quick. That same home, if you're wanting to do the flash ambient, you're gonna be spending some more setup time. Even when you learn the process, it's still going to take you a little bit of time to get used to it. If you want to know a lot more on the flash ambient techniques and a lot more about doing 360 virtual tours for real estate clients, the person who I've been learning a lot from is named Nathan Cool, and you can find him on YouTube. He's got several books out on real estate photography, and now he's got his newest book on the 360 virtual tours. No, I don't work for him. No, I'm not getting any kickbacks or anything. I just want you to be able to learn from someone who I've learned from as well. So I find his instructional tutorials fantastic, both him and Rich Baum. Rich's last name is spelled B-A-U-M, so check him out as well. So he does a lot with the flash ambient work as well. And tying all this together, you can make some really stunning stuff. If you find this video to be interesting, let me know. We can do more of these. And as always, if you liked it and learned something here, down below, make sure you give it a like, make sure you give us a follow. And if you like the content on this channel, you can also always become one of our patrons over on Patreon, which is in one of the drop-downs, one of the drop-down menus. So go ahead and give that a click, and you can sign up and be a patron today. All right, everyone, I hope this was enjoyable, and we'll see you again real soon. I've got to get back to work, and before that, I'm going to go through and edit this whole thing. All right.